Okay, let's take a look at the derivative of the tangent of x. So let's say our function is the tangent of x and we want to find the derivative. Well, with the sine of x, we went through the limit definition. But for the tangent of x, we can actually use the fact that the tangent of x is actually equal to the sine of x divided by the cosine of x. And if we know the derivative of sine and cosine, we can actually use the quotient rule to calculate this derivative. We have another video about the quotient rule, but this is a quotient of sine x and cosine x. So the quotient rule says that if you have a function defined as the quotient of two other functions, let's say n and d, then the derivative of that is going to be equal to the denominator times the derivative of the numerator minus the denominator's derivative, the derivative of the denominator, times the numerator, all divided by the denominator squared. So basically, we need to find the derivative of the numerator and the denominator, multiply the numerator by the denominator's derivative, the denominator by the numerator's derivative, subtract those two products, and divide by the denominator squared. So, in the case of our particular problem, n would equal the sine of x, which means that the derivative of sine, the derivative of the numerator, would be the cosine of x. And d would be the cosine of x, and the derivative of the cosine is actually the negative sine of x. So we have all the parts that we need to find the derivative of f. So f prime of x then is the denominator. The denominator is cosine x. So d, which is cosine x, multiplied by the derivative of the numerator. Well, the derivative of the numerator is also cosine x. Cosine x. And then it's minus sign here. The denominator's derivative, well, the derivative of the denominator is negative sine of x. So this is negative sine of x, the derivative of cosine, multiplied by the numerator. The numerator is sine of x. Sine of x. And this is all divided by the denominator squared, which is cosine squared of x. All right, let's simplify this a little bit then. Cosine x times cosine x is cosine squared of x. A negative times a negative would be plus, and this would be sine squared of x, all divided by the cosine squared of x. Now, there are a couple ways that you might think about simplifying this, but I'm going to simplify it using the Pythagorean identity. The Pythagorean identity says that sine squared x plus cosine squared x is equal to 1. So this becomes 1 over the cosine squared of x. That's the derivative of the tangent. Well, there's another way of saying 1 over cosine. 1 over cosine is the secant squared of x here. So instead of getting 1 over the cosine squared, we can just write it as the secant squared of x. So if the original function is the tangent of x, the derivative of the tangent of x is the secant squared of x. Derivative of tangent is secant squared.